Luke, thank you for sharing your story with us today. Man, I appreciate the honesty and just being able to name and say some of the guys in this room and men in this church that have stepped into the story. And each of us, as we follow after Jesus, can name names that will forever be part of our story because somebody took time to step out of their life and step into ours. They modeled something for us. They changed something for us. And that is why we're gathered here in places like this today, because we're believing that there can be many more stories across our church and across our community like Luke's, where this is where I was, but now this is where I am because of Jesus and because of those who stepped into my life and modeled something and changed. And so today, that's the conversation we want to have is, what does that look like to be a godly man? Luke had never seen examples like that until all of a sudden men stepped in and showed him what that meant. Hey, if we haven't met yet, my name is David. I'm the men's pastor here at Saddleback, and it is so great to see all of these guys packed in this place today because we are believing that God's doing something in our church. And we've been asking God, could you do a movement in the men of our church? Believing that if you want to do something significant in our church, go after the heart of the men and let them set the pace. Raise the temperature of faith in our men and the integrity, the character, the pursuit of Jesus right here in this place. And so we were so glad to see all of you here. Now today we're talking about this idea about what it looks like to be a godly man. This whole time is framed around that because the way that you see yourself will impact the direction of your life, the actions in your life, the words you say, the thoughts you have. Everything that you do will come out of the way that you see yourself. Now, I don't know if any of you ever heard this phrase when you were growing up, or maybe somebody said it. Anybody ever heard, you're not fat, you're just big boned? Did anybody ever hear that phrase? Okay, I have a personal story with that phrase because that's what people used to tell me. David, you're not fat, you're just big boned. So I remember like just last week telling somebody, I'm just big boned, man. My bones are bigger. I don't know. My mom told me. No, like I grew up hearing that idea, like somebody just told me I'm big boned, and I was like, well, okay, I don't know what to do with that. But I remember as a kid growing up thinking I'm fat, like I'm hefty. So like I literally grew up at the beach in Wilmington, North Carolina on the East Coast. And when I would go to the beach as a kid, I had this insecurity where I wouldn't want to take my shirt off. So I'm at the beach with all my friends as a kid, and instead of just frolicking in the ocean and having a great time, I'm like wearing my shirt because I'm like, I'm fat, I'm big boned. You know, I'm wearing my husky pants and all this different stuff like this and everything like that. And what was happening as a kid is the way that I saw myself was impacting my actions, even at that point. And it's the same for us as men. Because when men don't know how to see who they are correctly through the design of God, they won't know how to act in the way of God. And men, we've got to be able to see ourselves the way that we are. And there's so much happening in our culture today that creates a confusion around what is masculinity. You hear in culture today, you're like, toxic masculinity, and masculinity is toxic, it's unnecessary, we don't need it. You hear all these different things. You may even hear people say that strength where it gets framed as dangerous. Like, oh, that's just that toxic masculinity. Like you're being too strong. It gets framed as dangerous, and oftentimes leaving men not knowing what they're allowed to be, who they're allowed to be. What can I do? You start to feel like you're enemy number one when you look sometimes in culture. But here's the problem. All right, guys, here's the problem. If we don't step into godly masculinity and we don't live it out, you know what happens that we see in society? Families weaken. Strength gets distorted. The next generation loses direction and the church loses momentum. Godly masculinity is needed in our culture and needed in our church and from our men. And if culture is confused about masculinity, listen to me, if our culture is confused about it, the church can't afford to be. We can't be confused about it, okay? That's why today, this message and this time, what I'm titling it is Built for More. Not that you're built for more, like, I got to be somebody completely different than who I am, but you're built for more in the way that God has designed you as a godly man. It's not I'm built for more dominance and built for more success or built for more control, but it means I'm built for more faithfulness. I'm built for more humility. I'm built for more responsibility. Like God has put something deep inside me that I am built more for. And that is what being a godly man looks like. See, a worldly man, you'll understand this, a worldly man uses his strength to elevate himself. But a godly man uses his strength to elevate others. Because a godly man lifts everything and everyone around him. Think about this. When you step in to the strength that God has put inside you as a man, masculine, godly strength is there to lift other people. Godly, masculine strength is something that is powerful to make communities better and homes better, to step in stories. I love Luke sharing that story about the guy that you may not picture on the week, all of a sudden serving in kids on the weekend. There's a strength displayed under control that is lifting every generation, every person, all around, because that's what godly men do. So what does it look like for us in real life? That's what we want to get after today. And the Apostle Paul, he wrote most of the New Testament letters. He writes to Timothy in a letter called 2 Timothy that we have in the Bible. Paul is writing from prison, and he's writing to Timothy, this young pastor, his young disciple, the one that he's mentoring, pouring into, commissioning and empowering to lead this church. And he's writing to him, and he gives these images that we can see to understand what that godly man looks like. But when Paul writes this, he doesn't write it to shame him and say, you're not doing this good enough. Sometimes maybe that's the voice that you hear when we talk about you're built for more or being this man. Some of you, maybe because of your past, it all of a sudden hits at a critical edge like I'm not doing enough. But when Paul is writing to Timothy, he's writing and saying, Timothy, this is to shape you, to build you, to form you into the man of God that you are. And so we're going to read these verses together in 2 Timothy chapter 2. Verses 1 to 7. You can follow along on the screens, or if you got a Bible or anything like that, 2 Timothy chapter 2, verses 1 through 7. Listen to what Paul writes. He says, you then, my son, be strong in the grace that is in Christ Jesus. And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable people who will also be qualified to teach others. Join with me in suffering, like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. No one serving as a soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs, but rather tries to please his commanding officer. Similarly, anyone who competes as an athlete does not receive the victor's crown, except by competing according to the rules. The hardworking farmer should be first to receive a share of the crops. And then he wraps it up saying this, reflect on what I'm saying, for the Lord will give you insight into all this. So Paul, when he's writing to Timothy right now, he gives 4 different images. He talks about a son, he talks about a soldier, an athlete, and a farmer. And what we want to look at today is these are 4 different expressions, pictures of godly masculinity that we can learn from when we see ourselves. As Paul is writing on all this and says to Timothy, reflect on it. The Lord will instruct you. He's going to make it clear to you. So here's 4 expressions of godly masculinity. And I'm going to roll through these pretty quick today because we're going to have some time as at tables to discuss. But then we've got a few guys who are going to come up here and we're going to talk a little bit more practically about this in just a moment. So here's 4 expressions of godly masculinity. The first one, First expression of godly masculinity that we see is the lover. The lover. Now, I know you may see that and go, I didn't see that one coming first. Right? I didn't see that one popping up. I didn't think you were going to be like, yeah, godly masculinity. I just ate a burrito. It's still lodged like right here, but I'm feeling good. I'm feeling strong. I'm a lover. Right. That bacon I loved, like we don't necessarily think of it that way because what happens, think about this. In our culture today, the view of love is often romanticized and emotionalized. I've got to feel it. I got to be swept off. Love is all this kind of stuff. Like that's what you think of. You think of love being swept away. You've watched one too many Hallmark movies if you're married because you're a man committed to your wife and you endured it. You were thinking about many other things, but you say, don't pick up my phone. Don't pick up the phone. You watched it. And what's happened though is all these things have shaped our view of love. But when we come back and understand biblical love, you know what biblical love is? Biblical love is an intentional choice to place someone else before you, ahead of you, above you. Biblical love is a commitment. It is a covenant. It is something that, as Paul describes, is patient, kind, does not envy, does not wrong, forgives, does not hold against, lifts others up, puts the needs of someone else above yourself. It is the kind of love described by God as agape. It's not based on how I feel. It is based on the strength of my choice and commitment. And when I see myself as a godly man of one who brings love, listen, when Paul writes in 1 Timothy chapter 1, right before this, he tells Timothy, the spirit that God has put in you is not one that makes you timid. The word in the Greek is actually a coward. God didn't put a spirit inside you of cowardice. He put one inside you of power, love, and self-discipline. Because love requires the power of God when it is biblical love. It does not require the feeling of love in my heart. It requires the power of God leading me to love somebody else, to love my spouse, my kids, my family, my community, my coworkers, to love them the way that God does, to put them first. See, men are built for love, and men are built to love. But the problem is that we often have a hard time receiving love. And I think that's why it's significant that Paul writes and he says, but you, Timothy, my son. He starts off with this image of a son. Now, Timothy is not his biological son. Timothy is his son in the faith, his disciple, is one he's pouring into. But think about a son. A son is a son not by choice. A son doesn't get the title and position of son by earning it. A son is chosen. A son is a recipient. And when we see ourselves as men, as sons of God, when I put my faith and trust in Jesus for the forgiveness of my sins and I commit to follow him for the rest of my life, the Bible then says that we become a son of God, that God is now my heavenly Father. And depending on what Luke said, even in that story, some of us have images of God that are not true because we've been impacted by other earthly people who bear his image. But the God of the universe is a Father in heaven choosing to display his love, that when you come before his throne, he's like got his arm around you. And some of you, I just wonder, have you ever pictured God with his hand on your shoulder saying, my son, I'm glad to see you. I'm so glad you're here. Come here. I'm proud of you. Even I don't care how old you are. You still need to hear God's voice say, I'm proud of you. Because what happens when a man gets wounded and they can't receive love and see themselves as a son, we oftentimes are constantly trying to earn approval, or we are withdrawing to protect ourselves. Because a secure masculine man is able to receive his position as a son and to receive the love of God. Security in our masculinity comes in first seeing ourselves as a son, and we have to see that because you're built for love. Earlier this week, I did something, and I was like, you ever do those moments where you're like, I am such an idiot? you mess something up and you tell yourself that. I was literally like, I was so mad at myself with something I did, and I was like, I am such a moron. And I said it out loud, and my wife goes, do not talk to my husband like that. Because she goes, because that is not true about him. And I was like, kind of did this for a minute. I came back later. I was like, hey, I'm sorry. You're right. Well, the next morning, I was literally reading in Psalm 139. And Psalm 139, when you read through that, says, I am fearfully and wonderfully made. And God reminded me of that statement I had said about myself, my wife's comment, and then God was like, I don't think that either. And I was reminded that my name, literally David, like my name David in the Hebrew, back in the Bible when you read about David, that name David in Hebrew literally means beloved. One of the greatest kings that we read, who was a warrior who went after it, one of the most famous people in the Bible, his name was beloved. Nobody ever accused David of not being a man's man when he would lead armies out into battle, when he killed Goliath with a sling, when he did all these things. No, but his name was beloved. And here's the difference between loved and beloved, is loved is a verb, but beloved is a status. Beloved means that you are the object of love. You are the one that God sees. And sometimes as men, we have to see ourselves as God's beloved. And it sounds weird. But if I can't receive the love of God as a son, I will struggle to give the love of God. You are made and built for more and built to love, because a godly man lifts everything and everyone around them. The second expression that we see in this passage is the protector. The protector. You know, this sounds about right. You're like, we move past that lover part and you're like, protector, I get that, man. Like Braveheart right here. Like I'm ready to go. You're thinking about that, but he talks about the soldier, right? Men are built to protect. There's something that you even see physically in your build as a man, that your body was built to protect. It is ingrained in who you are as a godly man. God puts people around you, your family, those around. You're built to protect, but it's not just physical protection. Paul says, and he talks about joining like a good soldier of Christ Jesus. And he says, no soldier gets entangled in civilian affairs. You know what that means? No soldier gets distracted and loses focus. None of us doubt our soldiers when we picture them, and if you have served, thank you for your service here in our country, but if you have ever served or watched a soldier, nobody ever doubts they work hard, they sacrifice, they all these things, but a good soldier also has to have focus. There is focus and sacrifice when it comes to protection. And I don't know if in our day and age today, I left my phone down here because I didn't want to get distracted by it, but anybody ever, like you've picked your phone up and then 10 minutes later you forgot what you were actually picked it up to do? Anybody like that? Come on, man. I know all the teenagers' hands are going up too, because I did that thing all the time, man. All of a sudden, it's like my thumb just gravitates towards Instagram. I was like trying to do an email or something like that. I don't understand it. But what happens is we have distraction everywhere all around us all the time. And what happens when a soldier gets distracted is they become a security risk. A distracted soldier is a security risk. And therefore, a distracted man is a security risk for those he's assigned to guard. If we as men in our lives, in our home, in our places of influence become distracted, we become a security risk to those that we are meant to guard. A distracted man cannot give attention to his spouse to guard and protect his marriage. His presence is pulled away from his spouse, therefore leaving a gap for attack in his marriage. A distracted man can't show up and be available for his kids or put boundaries in place that they so desperately need, because he has lost his focus and is no longer able to protect and guard what is in his care. A distracted man leaves gaps in his armor and in his life for temptation to come in, for sin to take up a foothold, therefore undercutting his integrity. A distracted man is a security risk, because Satan isn't playing around. He's coming for you. Not to be like the boogeyman in the closet. This is a real life fight that we're in spiritually. When Paul says our fight is not against flesh and blood, it's against spiritual principalities. And every day when I get up as a man, I am waking up in focus to say, today I will guard what has been entrusted to me. I am awake, and God, I want my eyes to be open to see what you've got for me, because you built me to be a protector and you built me to be a lover. I am built for these things. Because a godly man lifts everything and everyone around him. He uses his strength to pour out and show love. He uses his strength to guard and protect. But then we see another expression, and that's the expression of leadership. The leader. The leader. Paul mentions the athlete. Now we think about this. Athletes, right? Anybody, I'm going to say, if you ever played a sport, you are an athlete. Own that right now. Like, you're an athlete. Let's go. Come on. How many of you are a couch athlete? You're like, oh, I got my NFL game on next week. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we're going to throw you in on this too, all right? So we're all in this boat together. So everybody here is an athlete. Everybody is. But you know what athletes have to do? Athletes have to have discipline. Athletes set a pace. Athletes work hard. Athletes have a focus. Paul even says, anyone who competes as an athlete doesn't receive the victor's crown except by competing according to the rules. So I don't care what you do. If you go after a game and you break all the rules, it doesn't matter how good you are. Anybody ever heard of Lance Armstrong? Lance Armstrong could ride a bike faster, further than most of us can drive a car. Right? He won 7 consecutive Tour de France titles. It's unheard of. But you know what happened? He lost them all because it found out he was performance doping. So here he is, breaking the rules, and he loses all of his titles. Why? Because how you win matters. How you win matters. Integrity is what keeps you there. When talent may get you somewhere, but integrity is what keeps you there. It'll be your integrity that maintains and sustains and pushes forward your leadership. It'll be your integrity that leads to your influence. It'll be your integrity as a man that leads to the influence you have with your kids, because they won't remember your speeches. You guys all know, you've sat in that chair too many times. I don't care how old you are. You can still picture your dad talking for like 20 minutes and you cut off at like 3 seconds in. You don't remember the speeches, but you do remember how they lived. You do remember the times where they modeled it well, and you do remember the times where they missed it. You remember the integrity. And integrity as a man matters. Godly, masculine, strong men have integrity in their bones, character in their hearts, to say, I won't do it perfect, but by God, I will get up every single day and try to be the best man before God that I can. The same man that you see up here, I want to be the same man when I'm sitting in my living room by myself, the same man with my kids, the same man at a restaurant. I want to be the same man everywhere. Why? Because my God is everywhere and I'm living for Him. And it will be your integrity that upholds your leadership. Because listen, God cares not just that you win, but God cares how you win. God cares how you live your life, how you treat people. It's why you're built for love. It's why you're built to protect. You're built to lead as a man. This is who we are, because a godly man lifts everything and everyone around him. That's who we are. Now, the last one we want to see expression is the provider. The provider. And this is the farmer. Now, a lot of men, I think we think about the provider, right? How many of you've ever asked the question or had it asked of you, like, so what do you do? Right? How many of you start to see yourself as I am and you fill in your job title? Right? We normally go, like when we go, hey, I'm a this or I'm a that or I do this, I do that. You don't normally go, hey, like Paul said, hey, my name's David. I am a son of God, saved by Jesus Christ, here to follow after him. Oh yeah, I do some other stuff on the side with that. We normally lead with our job because we see ourselves naturally, provision, provider. What we produce is something that is significant to us as men. It's like who we are. God put it in us. That's why it's so much there. But this idea of being a provider has first got to come out of my identity as a son, or else my provision becomes my identity, and my provision becomes what I'm striving for, to find my significance in, to find my fulfillment in. But I'm built to provide. The farmer, my granddad was a farmer up in Indiana, and I remember riding with him in the tractors. We'd be out there, I'd climb over all his farm gear, we'd work, we'd help plant soybeans, we'd do all kinds of stuff. We'd go walk the corn to make sure it was doing good, and I was like, I don't know the differences between yesterday and today, but it's like maybe this much taller. But he worked his fields, and farmers work hard. From sun up to sundown, they work hard, but they also know they've got a lot of work to do, and the harvest and the fruit won't happen until the future. So farmers think long term. Farmers work ahead. They don't chase quick wins. They invest faithfully into the future fruit that is coming. I don't know if you've ever planted a tree before, but my wife and I, we planted several trees in our house in San Jose before we moved down here, and I remember bringing those things home and thinking, this is going to take forever. Until I heard the phrase, which is about right. When the best time to plant a tree was? 20 years ago. Somebody said it right there. 20 years ago is the best time to plant a tree. It's so true. But you know when the second best time is? Right now. Right now. And you may be sitting there, and I don't care how old you are or where you are, saying, but I've already missed my chance to plant and cultivate. It's not too late. If you missed it 20 years ago, there's still today. Today is the day, because the provider, the men that are here, that provision is also about cultivation. It's not just about the money that I bring in, the physical needs of my family or my home that I meet. It's the cultivation. I provide emotional stability in my home. People know when dad is around, when my husband is there, it is strong and rock solid because he provides a stability in our home that points us towards Jesus. A man provides spiritual direction in his home, provides consistent presence. Because provision isn't just about what we produce, but it's about building things that can be handed to others in the future. This is what we do as men, as providers, because a godly man is lifting everything and everyone around him. And so these expressions that we see, you're built to be a lover, you're built to be a protector, you're built to be a leader, you're built to be a provider. And I just wonder, thinking about in this room right here, just to imagine if the men in this room all got up and for the next foreseeable future just said, every day I want to get up, I want to show up in my family, in my school, and where I work, in my church, and I want to focus on God. Use me as a man who follows after Jesus to lift those around me. Can you imagine the difference it would begin to make? Just to think in our church, a group of men like this, showing up this weekend in church saying, God, use me to lift my family today. Use me to serve and lift somebody else. Use me to be an encouragement to somebody. Come next week to the 21 days of prayer, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. right here in the worship center, and be a man who says, God, use my prayers, even if they feel feeble and weak, to lift this church and lift this place. Imagine if you showed up, students, some of you in your school today, and even in your teenage years, which we're glad you're here, by the way, and want you here at all of these. Listen, if you began to just grab a vision of, I am going to be a man who lifts everything and everyone around me and says, God, use my life each and every day. Just imagine the difference that it could have. I'm telling you guys, when a man begins to step into their masculinity as a man and begins to do this, it begins to have a ripple effect into so many different areas of life. And that's what we want to have and have experience today. And have experience here in our church and in the men. So here's what we're going to do right now. I want to invite you at your tables just to take a few minutes to have some discussion at your tables about this. The reason we're doing this is because we want to have one, honesty. We said in Saddleback Men, vulnerability is going to be our strength. And so sometimes we got to talk about it to help each other get better. Some of you are in your small group, you're with your sons, you're there. Let's talk about it. We're going to put a few questions up and put a timer up here. We're going to have a few minutes to talk about it. And then a few guys are going to pop up here and we're going to talk about that as a group together. So let's go ahead and do some table discussion. We'll pop up 3 questions here about what we just talked about, and you guys go ahead and talk at your tables together.